best that we possibly could have done in putting together the story based upon the constraints that we had and the publishing demands and the timeline and so forth to try to get the book done in order for it to coincide with the anniversary of 9/11. And I think that if your listeners take the time to go through the book, there's several new details that will emerge that some will find of interest. More importantly, I think that they'll certainly see what an extraordinarily challenging job it is being a diplomatic security service special agent, and how these individuals are placed in these remote outposts around the world with very little resources and limited backup to do the job.
This Benghazi attack has become much more than just an attack on the consulate. It became a presidential campaign slogan. Both sides have spun it for their own benefit and or to the detriment of the other people. I mean, it became a political football, and I think, in a sense, doing a disservice to the actual tragedy that happened.
I agree with you on that statement. I think the politics of Benghazi took off like a wildfire in Washington just based upon this is what Washington does. But at the end of the day, what Sam and I wanted to focus on was the true heroism and courage of young men literally under fire trying to do the best they possibly can under very challenging circumstances.
Fred, can you tell us in your work what you found that challenges what we already know about that attack?
A few things emerge, the details on how difficult it was to try to repel the force that was simply overwhelming at the villa. We chronicle the tick-tock of the actual attack and break down in very specific details exactly what occurred when the al-Qaeda terrorists came onto the compound, and the simply heroic actions by an agent to go in and out repeatedly to try to rescue Ambassador Stevens and the information officer Sean Smith at great personal risk. He certainly did the best he possibly could without any kind of smoke hood or fire suppression equipment to try to do his job, which was to protect Ambassador Stevens.
Why were we still in Benghazi?
Well, these are the kinds of decisions that diplomatic security simply doesn't get a seat at the table to try to decide. Remember, the mission of the Diplomatic Security Service is to protect Foreign Service officers around the globe, and there's a long history of tragedy inside the State Department, the Diplomatic Security Service. We talk about Benghazi in context of, in 1968, we had a very similar kind of event that occurred at the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. In 1979, we had another incident in Tehran when the U.S. Embassy was overran and American hostages were held for a better part of a year. And we talk with agents that had participated in those attacks to help put Benghazi in perspective, that this is the mission. This is a very difficult mission. When you dial 911 here in the United States, you can expect competent authorities and help to quickly get to aid you. When you're DS agents and you're in these outposts around the world, there is nobody to call at times. You're on your own. You have to do the best you possibly can.
So after looking at the TikTok of this, would you say that the questioning and criticism of Hillary Clinton and the way this was all handled was fair and valid? I mean, what was your take on that?
I think there was a tremendous amount of Washington politics surrounding the hearings, and in reality, she probably would have been one of the last persons that I would have called to testify, simply because, again, most people don't understand how the system works in the counterterrorism arena. As a former agent, there are specific protocols and SOPs that are followed when these events occur. And very little decision-making is at the cabinet level. which Secretary Clinton was.
Mm-hmm.
So people, I think, have this idea fueled basically by fiction books and movies that the president's sitting behind his desk, day to day, dictating direct actions that take place. And that's farthest from the truth.
But Mr. Burton, we have the president who is dictating what we might be doing in Syria, and as someone who's well versed in security and counterterrorism, what's your take on that? Was this the wise course of action?
Well, when you look at the events unfold in Syria, you really have to go back to our book, Under Fire in Benghazi, and start to see how politics in the Middle East and our expeditionary diplomacy and our placement in certain places around the world that are very, very hostile, that there is an outcome that sometimes can turn very bad. And as you walk back the cat in this business and you try to figure out how do we get in our situation in Syria, you really have to look at what took place in Egypt and have to look at what took place in Benghazi. So the events in Syria are very pertinent to our story in Benghazi.
The book is called Under Fire, The Untold Story of the Attack on Benghazi, coming up on the year anniversary. Fred Burton, our guest. Fred, that morning we all woke up, and the story that morning was that this attack happened because of a video that was released, and these terrorists got upset and they got angry, so they stormed the compound. How much now, a year after that, how much of that story is actually true?
Well, I think, again, you're dealing with politics and the ramp up to a presidential election, which cloud the perspective of everybody's talking points at that moment in time. But I think Sam and I make it very clear in the book that the moment that the first round was fired, the agents trapped in Benghazi knew they were under a terrorist attack, and that message was conveyed back to the U.S. Embassy, Tripoli, and in turn conveyed back to the State Department Operations Center in Washington.
The book is called Fred Burton. The author is Fred Burton. The book is called Under Fire, The Untold Story of the Attack in Benghazi. Fred, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you for having me on.
8:30, Big